players. The nominated companies are duty-bound to notify government or the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum of any operating challenges. In this respect, Gulf Energy, which it tries to single out and profile, while reviewing the monthly delivery projections, formally notified the ministry that a single cargo had been caught up in the conflict in the Middle East. Gulf Energy also confirmed that in fulfillment of its obligations to the government of Kenya, the firm's main supplier had secured 2 alternative vessels in place of the tanker caught up in the Straits of Hormuz. These replacement vessels were secured at the same G2G pricing, notwithstanding significantly higher wartime freight and premium costs, and at no additional cost to Kenya. They discharged ahead of the schedule between 15th and 19th March 2026, with both cargoes fully complying with the Kenya fuel specifications. The order of events outlined by the opposition characters is equally wrong. I think they are playing to the gallery of their paymasters and trying to milk a crisis that should have otherwise been a matter of grave national intervention. While the National Security Advisory Committee recommended exploring strategies to enhance national energy security, it never recommended breaking the law in this endeavor. Indeed, these characters' assertions that the 13 oil marketing companies were invited to an OTC process is self-incriminating. The rules governing an OTC process are very clear, and it is clear that the law was not adhered to. Can you, this person who has a phone, please put it off. It would be nice. In an ensuing struggle to remain relevant, the opposition characters call for mass action over the fuel price increase that is driven by global shocks is outrageous, naive, and anarchist thinking, and it ignores the fundamental reality that petroleum pricing in import-dependent economies like Kenya is largely shaped by international market dynamics, geopolitical tensions, and supply chain disruptions beyond domestic policy control. That's why some of us were in Uganda, and we've been having this conversation about the unity of Africa. You know, today Africa produces about 10 million barrels of oil, crude oil. Africa only uses 4.5 million barrels of crude oil. If today we in Africa created our own refineries and our own systems of distribution to the various African countries, we will not need to rely on the Gulf, we will not need to rely on anyone. And in fact, one of the things that we are exploring with other partners is to build Africa's reliance on its own energy sources, including and benefit of their own minerals, including rare earth, cobalt, and others. And I think these are the kind of things that worry us as a country and must worry us as Africans in terms of our own energy security. The disjointed opposition further proposes to scrap the National Infrastructure Fund, Affordable Housing Levy, and the NSSF contribution, which reflects a policy posture that is fundamentally at odds with sustained infrastructure development and long-term economic transformation. This suggests that the opposition is not genuinely invested in transformative governance, but is instead driven by populism, a narrow pursuit for power for self-serving political aggrandizement, devoid of substantive policy commitment or developmental vision. You know, when you want to set up the country on a reverse gear, it's an act of sabotage. These people are, if you look at the face of the opposition, when they give a face, they give a press conference, it is the ugliest representation of past regimes, and particularly failures in those past regimes. The ugliest face of extrajudicial execution, the ugliest face of a clueless vice president, the ugliest face of the worst tribalist we've ever seen, the ugliest face of everything that is wrong about Kenyan politics is reflected in that disjointed opposition. And that's why their paymasters, their patrons, are urging them to call for sabotage of this country so that we can take back the country to those years where the Kenyattas and the Mois dominated and presided over our lives, our economy, which was a preserve of a few. This National Infrastructure Fund instrument is designed to mobilize domestic resources for critical investments in housing, transport, and social protection, key pillars that drive productivity, create jobs, and stimulate inclusive growth. Dismantling such frameworks without presenting viable alternatives signals a lack of commitment to structured development financing and risks undermining the country's capacity to fund large-scale national priorities. You know, an opposition which tells the president not to pursue taxes, an opposition that tells the president not to go for debt, an opposition that tells the president not to, and the government, not to pursue the national infrastructure program or process. It's an opposition that wants the country to move nowhere. They bring us the issue of debt, and all of them are perpetrators of the worst crimes, economic crimes, and worst crimes of marginalization of minorities, of those who are in the lower brackets of society. They were the ones who marginalized the poor. They kept the poor in slums. Are today the same perpetrators, through their patron Uhuru Kenyatta and others, who want to sabotage the progressive programs which will lead to one of the most robust social economic transformation in this country. So you see an opposition that wants to return us back to status quo. They have seen how we have navigated a very harsh terrain by the recollection of the very Azimio members. Uhuru Kenyatta, after the elections of 2022, had known that he had placed this country into jeopardy. He had assured them that in 6 months, the Kenya Kwanza government was going to collapse. 6 months on, Kenya Kwanza government was able to meet its sovereign obligations. It was able to realign or to reassign their debt obligations, find headroom in our domestic revenue mobilization so that we can be able to fund other government priorities. So therefore, you're looking at an opposition that is not only clueless, that only want to sabotage, but they are the worst remnants of the old order that wants to take us back to where we came from. Even when you look at this G2G, you see the potential of what happened when those three gentlemen approved the consignments outside the G2G. Would have been ideally to get our other lead oil partners in the global market, Aramco, Saudi Aramco, ADNOC, to vacate the G2G arrangements. If that had happened, we'll have gone back to the pre-G2G arrangement, meaning, first and foremost, those guys will have recalled the $3 billion deferred payment dollars. In addition to that, there will have been so many other things that will have happened, including people now having to pay for oil supplies using the US dollar, bringing that the same crisis again. These characters, all they see, all they wake up of every morning is to see how to sabotage this country. The characters in the opposition appear bent to sabotage the economy and committed to rolling Kenya's inclusive development agenda, rolling back Kenya's inclusive development agenda, and perpetuate marginalization and exclusion, reflecting the beliefs of the governments they have served in and the desire of their patrons and financiers to continue with their dominance of the country's politics and economics. And we remain confident in the stewardship of Honorable Opiyo Wandayi as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, and Honorable Lee Kinyanjui, Cabinet Secretary for Investment, Trade, and Industry, and equally ask them to remain steadfast in the face of misleading, defamatory, and sensational assertions by the opposition characters, particularly one, Wamunyoro. You know, Wamunyoro today, when he was in government, Wamunyoro spent a lot of his time trying to profile the Luo community. He will try to say in the morning how they are not people of maandamano, wao ndio wako na biashara, wao biashara zao wataziunga mkono, wao si sijui yule mzee wa vitendawili, sijui ameweka wa mitego. Baada ya sasa kumalizika hii kitu na yeye kutolewa kwa serikali, after that maligning of one community indefinitely and calling himself a shareholder, against the will of the people of Kenya. He now has gone on another orchestrated attack on the Kalenjin community. Wherever he gets an opportunity, he profiles very genuine business people. Jack Chebet is a regional giant in Starbucks. Jack Chebet is a well-known business person. So what he does, he profiles these business people. Anytime he will say there's a squad led by Cheriot, there's this led by, don't think that he is saying this out of sheer genuine concern. He's now profiling another community. That is Rigiji's strategy. Now that he found that within these three individuals so accused, there are two Kalenjins, he said he now reverts back to his pet subject, accusing Ruto of profiteering. You know, the fellow is so predictable, because those who remember him even from the university, these were his pettiness. Stealing money from the students' organization, stealing money from orphans, stealing maize from, you know, this is his character. And everything about Rigiji is a missed business opportunity for him. You know, in a G2G arrangement, government to government, it's the government of that other side that is nominating the MCs from this other side. Akaona hakuna kula. Today everything is EPCF. The government doesn't have money. To a large extent, the government is building most of this on a BOT. Build, operate, own, transfer. The roads that are coming up, the infrastructure that is being put up, it is being put up on a BOT arrangement, EPCF. You bring the finance. So it is no longer, you know, most of these men and women who served previous governments were beneficiaries of tenderpreneuring. Tenderpreneuring has ended. And now constantly, they look at everything and try to malign it, because they have no other agenda. They have no alternative. They present no alternative program. And Rigiji profiles and profiles and profiles every community. He picks on a young lady from the coast region called Fahima, profiles her that she's being set up to steal an election. Calls Ethakan, profiles him. You know, we have been patient as the people of Kenya, but will not allow a bitter tribalist to wake up every morning and think about name calling of people that he believes he needs to malign, because he's trying to talk to a constituency out there that he's inciting ethnically. So we're also getting to that point where there is a genuine national crisis. It cannot be that you know, the government averted a crisis. Can you imagine this Rigiji being in this government still? So let him fact check where he can, but he must qualify his statements. We must now respond to his statements with facts. That's why today I've given a fairly comprehensive statement to rebut a lot of the misconceptions they continue to create. You know, hii nchi si mtu mmoja. We are getting concerned that one person will wake up every morning, pick on a subject matter, malign one person after another, and think he can get away because there's a community or some people he appeals to that he will ask to the streets. He's asking for mass action of an international fuel crisis. If Rigiji was sincere, the same way once upon a time he called on Trump to arrest certain people from Kenya, Rigiji should be calling for mass action against Trump and the war criminal Netanyahu. Those are the people who created this crisis, not William Ruto, not the people of Kenya, not trying to put young men to the streets to come and loot and destroy property. Those are the people you should be calling for mass action for. Lakini wajua ukiwa maumau bandia, hiyo ndio kazi unafanya. Vitisho vya urongo na kutisha wale ambao unafikiria hawezi kufanya kitu. Finally, I wish to take this for taking progressive steps to navigate the prevailing challenges and cushion consumers from the adverse effects of the international oil price shocks. And this I want to assure the people of Kenya. I think the government is extremely compassionate. It appreciates the crisis that we have been driven to by the illegal war in the Middle East. And I am sure that all reasonable measures will be taken, even as we progress to readjust the interventions. But at the same time, maybe also to be part of the international effort to end this crisis so that we can reset back to our to our normal lives across the world. Yeah, a lot of shocks have been witnessed across Africa and across the world. There are shortages in Nigeria, which is an oil-producing country. There are shortages in Tanzania, Egypt is rationing. I'm talking about the economies that the prices have gone up across the globe, and I think it is not a Kenyan problem uniquely, but Kenya must be part of the solution also on the global arena in the geopolitics of this country by putting reasonable pressure on those who have started this crisis to end it, so that we can be able to reset back to our normal lives. And I know that opportunists, demagogues, tribalists like Rigiji with no agenda will look for every opportunity to try and cash in crisis, because mine as a program, every crisis is an opportunity, because you have never been a nationalist. One can never call you to duty to being a nationalist. So therefore, those are my many remarks on behalf of the party. You have something to add? Unless we will invite some few questions and then call it a day. Yeah. By who? Ndindi Nyoro, you go and ask Ndindi Nyoro. But you know why? One of the reasons I don't take Ndindi seriously. I have never seen someone in my lifetime fighting for the rights of the marginalized people of this country, those who've been economically excluded, who is so vicious in entitlement like Ndindi Nyoro. Ndindi Nyoro was chairman of the budget committee, allocated roads for himself, did everything to build Kiharu and part of the larger areas. Then Ndindi Nyoro now doesn't want us to take debt so that Endorois, Turkanas, Somalis, Gabras, Boranas, Giriamas, maendeleo isiwafikie, ili mtutu wa jinga. Uwe mwambie his business is nyumbani. Kenya, Africa is never his business. So hiyo proposal yake enda upeleke kwa TV. I will not take any proposal from him. Okay, as long as it's a different one. You know, you see, you can't allow this country to be run by a bitter man who has been removed from the finance committee, who has illegally appropriated or unprocedurally appropriated development to himself, and wants to deny those of us who for the first time are seeing the fruits of government whatever programs. Hataki tuchukue deni, hataki tulipishe kodi, hataki tuwe na national infrastructure fund, alafu mtuto wa jinga, tusiwe na maji, tusiwe na mashule, tusiwe na kawi, tusiwe na afya, tusiwe na manyumba, alafu useme wale watu ya coast ni wavivu, wajinga, wale waluya ni watu ya kuosha macho, wale wajaluo watakukojolea. Mwache hiyo bwana. Achana hiyo watu I can tell the mindset of someone. Africa is not his business. He very ruthless tribalist.
How do you explain that we have fuel in Kenya going at higher prices compared to the international economies?
Because you see, that's first not true. The fuel spike. You know when Kenyans here in the last fuel hikes were saying that fuel was trading higher in Kenya than in the rest of the region. I was actually in Tanzania because I am a IALA member of parliament who operates from here and Arusha. And I'm feeling fuel and it's more expensive. So I keep using almost all manners of exchange rates. Because you know these people, so you give me those set of fuel prices. And then also realize one thing. Kenya gets a lot of its products at a higher price. Reason being, in the global market arrangement, Kenya is taken to be a middle-income economy. Even the way people sell things to us is fundamentally different. How the world views us is fundamentally different. Tanzania are our brothers, but they fall in the category of the least developed countries. They get their products cheaper, they have more rebates, they still have development finance, they still, grants, things that we are no longer in that space. But compare alike for alike. So, you know, you abrogate yourselves this pseudo just because you choose to hate a country and to hate your president. You start abrogating yourself pseudo-economics and don't dig on the facts. Siku ile tunaambiwa fuel ilikuwa more expensive hapa Kenya kuliko Tanzania. Mimi najaza gari yangu Tanzania, hata nimeweka half tank because nikajua nikifika mpaka nitapata cheaper fuel so that I can just leave Arusha to Namanga. So there are innuendos and the mudsling. You come here to a press conference of this standing to ask us and Ndinyoro proposal. Hey, vipi bwana? Today I don't want to touch on Kalau, but he's already dealing with it.
My name is Omar from West TV. My question is...
West ni huko? Okay.
My question is, apart from the reducing of the VAT and other measures that the government is doing, as a government, are you considering reviewing the 15 or so taxes that have been put on fuel since the other regime up to now? Are you considering...
As time goes by, and depending on the length of the crisis, we hope that there will be a solution. We hope that there will be a solution and we'll reset back to our normalcy. Yeah? So, once we reset back to our normalcy, I do not believe that this crisis will be protracted. And I think as we evolve, definitely new realities will emerge and we will align with the evolving situation. But right now, this is a first-tier approach to a crisis that is definitely ensuing, a crisis that is that was thrown onto us by international arrogance, by one or two nations that have bombs. But now we have to face the brunt of it, all of us as Kenyans. So ambia Rigiji, wale wanamjua, hata sisi kama serikali akianza maandamano against Netanyahu na Trump, sisi pia tutakuja. Lakini you are demonstrating against a crisis that is international, a crisis that is well known. You are missing the point deliberately. Hapa unapata pesa ya watu ambao wanakufadhili. Kule unaogopa kuambia ukweli wale ambao wanaleta hii crisis. So a coward of fake Mau extraction. So I'll take one last one. I saw one extra hand. I mean, that was not a hand. Okay, Sisi, I think we have done well, and we are very grateful, reassuring to the people of Kenya that everything is being done to ensure that this crisis does not run out of control. Asanteni sana, Mungu akubariki.